Hey there, Star Stuffs! I am your host and artist, Ash Archambault of the Creator Being Podcast. Welcome here to this space where you will be reminded that you are a masterpiece in progress because your life is a work of art. You're going to be reminded that you are a living legacy and have everything in this now moment to create the life you want to experience. Right here during this show, we are going to go into practices, and I'm going to guide you to help you guide yourselves into greater experiences of personal freedom and connection to the creative force of the universe. We're going to practice trust falling with ourselves and the universe, and it's in this beautiful space that we can honor our humanness, our uniqueness, our connectivity to all other beings and to the loving, infinite, divine universe that is here for us. So join me, Star Stuffs, on the Creator Being Podcast. Let's go. Today, Star Stuffs, we're going to examine with tremendous curiosity the two selves that we're here to experience in this life. The human self and our highest self, what I like to call the infinite self. They're both necessary for our existence and for experiencing a fully expanded life. And they are constantly co-creating with each other, whether we're aware of it or not. Your human self, your beautiful human self with all of its thoughts and feelings and goals and dreams and pains. And then you have your highest self, your infinite self, which is the quiet North Star guiding you. And you can commune with it through your intuition. You could call this infinite self your consciousness, source, God, the divine, the universe. But all that matters is how you can connect to it. And today, we're going to examine the rainbow bridge between our human self and our highest selves, where our human can connect to the voice of the infinite, our intuition. And today we'll examine how our identities in our human experience can open themselves up more and more of consciously listening to and following our intuition. So join me here today as we move through our identity to our intuition on the Creator Being Podcast. Now, hopefully, since you are here, you are a star stuff that is very much curious about your human experience. Why you think the thoughts you think, paying attention to your patterns and your behaviors, exploring your inner land of emotions and watching your thoughts. And you can call your human self the one that identifies, and your infinite self as the one who intuits. For example, I can identify in my human life as a mother, or I've heard that I'm like Ram Dass meets Mary Poppins. I could identify as that as well. But my intuition is limitless, and I don't identify with my intuition. It's my creator being self that is the master, full of mystery and fertile expansion. Now, you can call it the infinite self, you can call it consciousness, you can call it source, God, the divine, the universe. I'm an equal opportunity infinite self institution. Each and every one of us is on this journey, this dance between our human self and our infinite self. Some unconsciously, some more consciously, and where we all are in our personal journey is exactly where we need to be. completely. Some of us are still very much experiencing our human mind and are very much in the mental realm of exploring this human experience. And some of us are deep into our emotional world, our inner life and our emotional world. And some of us are fine and happy to be in the mental space and mostly in the mental space. And some of us are like deep in the emotional space and are just like really in it right now. And some of us have moved through a lot of our mental space and a lot of our emotional space and are experiencing more and more sustained states of this infinite self. This infinite self becomes more consciously active the more that we interact with it, the more that we cross the rainbow bridge. And of course, we're going to do that today, my sweet friends. And what we realize more and more is that this infinite self is actually guiding the human, even if the human is totally blissfully unaware or the human is very, very much aware and very happily ready to be led. It's very interesting. And it's like, I feel like when you start tasting this infinite self, so you're not kind of stuck or stagnant in the land of the mind. You're not stuck or stagnant or heavily identified in the land of emotions. And you're able to start tasting more and more of this infinite self. It's like the book, if you give a mouse a cookie or you give a moose a muffin, it's like you just want to keep tasting more. Oh my God. It's like nectar. It's like breathing. And that has been my path and my experience over the past, 12 years now. But no matter where you are in this path of your human journeying self, it's all valid. It's all exactly as it should be. It's so easy to judge each other as we go along in this journey about who we are and where we're going. And the thing is that if you can allow yourself the grace to not be the same person you were even a week ago, then you can give that grace to other people and you can see people and where they're at. It doesn't mean that you have to agree. It doesn't mean you have to subscribe to where they're at either. It just means you're like, oh, I see. I see to a certain degree where you're at. And you can just say, I'm just not there. But I so appreciate where you are. I can see it and I can meet you there. And that, my friends, that is compassion. That is compassion when we're dealing with each other and our identities. And the people that I have met in my life that have been the dearest, most beautiful soul family, they have accepted me in all iterations and all forms of who I have been. All the things that I have identified with, and I'm going to tell you a couple stories today. But no matter where we're at on this journey, today I want to weave a message and a practice of connecting to our identities and our intuition in a way that is hopefully a little bit more accessible and compassionate. That's all I'm trying to offer today. Something that you can actually touch and use and feel and play around with in your own life. And so the terms of identity and intuition, I feel like these are really great ways, great portals to start opening up the mental concept of this human self and our infinite self. Because the reality is, the vast majority of our human experience is based on our individual identity. But it's fascinating, you guys. For the first year of our lives in this human body, this isn't the case. We're not individuals. We don't sense ourselves as individuals. More research has come out about babies and newborns in the first year of life, and it turns out that babies for the first year of their life don't really have a sense of individuation. A baby doesn't have a concept of self. Whomever it comes into contact with, it's in oneness. It just feels, I am me and me are we. Not even I am me, they're just I am we. They are just an extension, let's say, of the mother that's holding them. How beautiful is that? And so you can easily say that our truest nature is this infinite self, this self that doesn't feel a separation. And as babies, we realize this. This is how we came into the world. I mean, can you imagine just now thinking about the process of being born? You're in this womb space. You're like just chilling out, feeling completely one with your environment. You don't really have like a sense of your body at all. You're just in this place that's just like dark and cozy and just little bits of warmth and light that just make you feel comforted. And then all of a sudden, you're shot out of a cannon into this body, into these lungs, into an atmosphere where you have to breathe, you have to start moving, you have to start figuring out what to do with your body. And you feel your first sense of separateness from your home, from what you just felt completely at one with. I mean, isn't that a trauma? Holy crap. And that's just what it means to be human, folks. Like, like we just have this experience when we're born. And then as we grow, what happens is after that first year of life, we start to individuate. We start to have more separateness. We slowly take on the behaviors of our caregivers, our environments, and then we grow a little bit more, and then we start comparing ourselves. We learn who we are. We start this process of buying into this developmental phase where we learn by comparing ourselves to everyone around us, what they like, what they dislike, what they believe, what they don't believe, what they value, what they don't value. And then we begin to unconsciously and consciously competing with others to then feed this identity that was founded on comparing ourselves to others. And individuation takes over. Human identity takes shape. Thoughts, feelings completely are running the show, and we're not really even aware of it. Then, if we're lucky, we are taught the bridge that helps us get from our human self to our infinite self. And that bridge is awareness, our attention, our focus, our observation of our human self. Its thoughts, its feelings, its behaviors, its wants, its needs, its desires. Awareness is our innate superpower, and it's also the hand of the infinite reaching out to our human self. This is why it is so utterly vital that we develop our awareness and teach awareness as a skill to be developed from childhood. I spent 8 years doing this, and it was the most rewarding work I have ever done. And hey, yeah, most of us don't get this opportunity, don't come into contact with the concept and the practice of awareness until we're much older. But hey, great, we're here. We're exactly where we need to be. And we're here together, friends. Yippee-ki-yay. So we're perfectly right on time. And here's the funny thing that happens to us adults. When we're not aware, and even when we think we are aware, we still become heavily identified with different ways of being and different ways of thinking. I'm sure many of you have met people in your life that think Jesus or Allah is the only way, or veganism is the best and only way to eat, or that getting a college education is the only way to be, or oh my gosh, if you don't have this much amount of money saved by this time of age, well, then you're really screwed. And it's like all of these things are inherently fine. These paths, these understandings are great. They're all here for us to try on as a part of our own self-discovery. But here's a very special concept and practice I want to offer. I call it choose, use, move, lose. Cue my Mary Poppins moment today. Let's choose, use, move, and lose the lens we see things through. The lens we see things through. The lens we see things through. Let's choose, use, move, and lose the lens we see things through. It's the most delightful way for you and everybody else. Okay. I'm gonna break it down now, y'all, folks. Okay, so here's the deal. We choose a lens to see our experience or behavior through. Great. We made a choice, which is brave and awesome and full of discovery and curiosity. We already win. Great. Let's say I choose therapy, okay? So now I find a therapist that I think I'm gonna like. I'm in therapy and I'm going to use this when in Rome attitude and use the shit out of therapy. And I'm going to examine all the ways it can help me. This is choosing and using this process. Then inevitably, I will come to a point where I feel that I have examined all that I need to for now, and I can move through this experience, graduate, you could say, to some degree, or simply just put this experience on the shelf for now. That is moving through the experience. Okay. I know that I moved through the experience. I squeezed all the juice that I need for now. And then when we make that choice, then what typically happens is actually a little magic starts to happen. And then something new comes into our focus or our field. And we start being like, oh, this is the next thing I want to try and investigate. And so we've lost therapy for now, but we've opened ourselves up to another choice. Let's say this new choice is a self-help practice. Okay, let's say, oh, I just learned about EFT or tapping. And now I am choosing to explore my next edge and my next level of self-discovery so that I can aid my evolution of knowing myself. This choose, use, move, lose concept, all I'm trying to say with them is that we can take our experiences and choose curiosity with them as opposed to becoming heavily identified. We can appreciate the experience. We can move through it. We can find what works for us. We can engage our senses fully and get pleasure and enjoyment and discovery out of it. And then we can just drop it when we're ready. Right. It's like a toddler, right? When a toddler wants a toy, they just go and they play with it and they play with it however they want to. And then when they're done, they just drop it and then they're on to like taking off their diaper, right? To me, this choose, use, move, lose process is like a mechanical, actionable thing that you can point to develop more non-attachment and less heavy identification with things. So I'm going to keep rolling with this therapy thing. Once I've chosen therapy, I can see the benefits of therapy because I've done it. But I happily chose to see those benefits, but I'm moving on. I want to keep exploring. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with therapy. It just means that like, okay, I'm not there anymore. I'm moving on to this next thing. And so then I can see the benefits of healing tools. And I can see the benefits of meditations, and I can see the benefit of screaming alone in a field at night. And I can see the benefit of neuroscience. I can see the benefit of ecstatic dance with people who also love ecstatic dance. I can see the benefit of praying to God, to Christ, to the Mother, to angels, and to many, many more. You can't know for yourself if you don't keep going through the process of choose, use, move, and lose. It's saying all of my experiences inform me, they open me, and they lead me to more discovering. So when you're judging someone else for their part of the journey and what they're currently seeing as the end all be all of something, know that you're stuck. You're stuck, and that's okay. And what I mean by stuck is that you're just not able to see where they're at. You're only able to see where you're at. And people can only meet you as far as the depth of their own experience, their own capacity, their own mental capacity, their own emotional capacity. And so we can't judge each other for this. Adam Roa, a master creator whom I love listening to his content, he has this wonderful analogy that I just saw in one of his videos. I'm paraphrasing, but he says, if you were to meet a child who comes up to you and is having trouble tying their shoe, would you judge them for that? Some people would. I know, I've met those people. I have. But most of us wouldn't. Most of us hopefully wouldn't. Because that child they just don't know how to tie their shoes yet. And that's the same with what we're learning mentally, what we're learning emotionally, and what we're experiencing spiritually. Which is why it's so important to have this sense of your human self being not this fixed identity. We all do it though. I mean, it is so human to do this. We all cling and hang to and sling around our fearful projections of our identities onto others. And this creates resistance to our own expansion, you guys. This is one of the most beautiful paradoxes of spiritual truth I have come to understand. I'm going to give you an example from me. I personally became heavily identified with my role as a mother. I was unconsciously self-sacrificing, not taking care of myself because it's all about the kids and it's all about the house. And while I think this is a daily recalibrating experience for most of us parents, I had to graduate from subtly blaming my kids for the reason I wasn't feeling fully fulfilled. Eek. It was not their fault, but my identification with being a type of mom was a resistance in my own expansion. I was simply limiting myself. And that's what I want to say too about when we identify with these things. Okay, I'll give you another example. Let's just keep going through a couple more examples. So like, I, in my 20s, was super duper into plant-based eating. I made a cookbook. I had like a little side business called Kitchen Coach LA. I was a health blogger for multiple people. I got really into Ayurvedic eating and I got really into this whole like very plant-based, super duper vegan culture in LA at the time. And I remember I was trying to make money all kinds of ways. And I was on this panel where they like pay you for your opinions. And I remember this panel, it ended up being this whole discussion about fast food chains and like kind of sit down chains as well, food chains. And so people were talking about, these places where they like to eat. And I was just the biggest freaking jerk. I was such a snob at the time. I remember being like, I would never go to any of those places. Do you know what they put in this? And you know what they put in that? And it's like, I remember everyone else in this focus group looked at me like I was just the biggest bitch and the biggest weirdo alien. Not because I was a vegan, but because I was so heavily identified with what I was learning. And it was so great for me at the time. And so I just thought like, well, of course everyone should know about these things. And I was that way too in my spiritual path as well. It's like, oh my God, I learned these things. I have to tell everybody and they're just going to love it. And it was like the opposite. And I came off as a total nutcase to some people. And so it was like, you just have to laugh when we get so heavily identified with these concepts or roles that we play. And it's just part of this self-discovery human experience. And if you've been in it and you can see yourself through it, you can move through it and lose it, you can then have so much more compassion for other people and where they're at in their journey. And when you are heavily identified with something, a lot of times you don't even realize that we are. But when we do realize it, there shouldn't be this sense of like guilt or shame. It was just like you were just trying on an outfit. You were just seeing if this fits. And you know what? Maybe parts of it still do fit for you, but you're allowed to move through it. And when you allow yourself to move through it, that is when you create expansion, my friends. That's the only thing I am talking about. You can stay as a only dog loving vegan super duper Christian mom, whatever. I'm just using all these things for the rest of your life and never move from that place. And good for you. If you are happy and fulfilled and that is like what brings you joy and what makes sense in your life, then oh my God, I'm so happy for you. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. I genuinely mean that because each of us is simply here to figure out what feels good for us, what feels right, and to open ourselves up to the possibility of like exploring more of that. What feels even more right? Or what feels better to me now in this season or this chapter of my life? Now, if you subscribe to Choose, Use, Move, Lose, this doesn't mean that you don't have opinions. This doesn't mean you don't have consistency in your life. It's just that your opinions and different consistencies, they change with you. What happens is the more you release control of this identification with certain feelings or patterns of thinking or a particular role that you play in your human, it's not that you abandon these roles, it's that you don't become so heavily identified with them that they limit you and your own expansion. Because the more you open yourself up to moving through experiences and not being attached to them, needing to inform your identity, the more your infinite self opens up to you and your infinite self and the infinite self in others opens up to you, the more your intuition, which is the guiding aspect of this infinite self, can start to speak to you. You can start to hear it. It can start to take over more and more. And that's a miracle, you guys. That's magic, you guys. It's a miracle because so many of us don't necessarily lean into that. And it's magic because it is so powerful and unexpected. But it's actually something that is completely available to you right now. And yes, when you start experiencing your intuition, it's quite a fear-inducing experience as well as exhilarating all at once. Because to begin to trust a pull, a phrase, things that keep popping up in your reality, a longing that just pangs out of the clear blue sky, or rather the fertile infinite void. That's the opposite of identity, which is so firmly rooted in our perceived control of our lives. And when we can start relinquishing this control to our identity and to the people around us and their identities, then, darlings, this is when we start to experience drops and then dribbles and then sprinklings and then waterfalls of intuition. And that, my friends, is like tasting nectar. It is the sweet purity and abundance of water that is infinite source. And the biggest cosmic joke for all of us, the paradox of all paradoxes for us all, is that moving to and fro from our human identifications and our infinite intuition is that you have to relinquish, move through, and overcome so much fear in order to truly feel free. Babes, this is the spiritual path. This is the work. And this is what you have to do, even when you don't consider it spiritual. This is the path of anyone who has an idea that they want to see all the way through to the end. Anyone who says, I want to create the life that I want to experience. I want to feel more free. That is going to require you to give up a lot of fear. I know this space very intimately because for many, many, many years, I consciously and unconsciously played very, very small. I went through all kinds of abuses, and I ultimately discovered how unconsciously my fears were attracting these painful experiences. But it's not just that, it was that these experiences were here to show me how to overcome my fear. Fear is a contradiction. We think we are protecting ourselves, which is exactly what our biological human brain is supposed to do. It's doing its job. Okay, our thinking mind is supposed to protect ourselves. But in that protectionism, we are simultaneously limiting ourselves. It's not wrong. It's not right. It's just limiting. I'm going to give you an example from my life. When I first started having kind of a decidedly spiritual experience and path, I wanted to keep my energy protected. And I would do all these things to try and, keep my energy in my field and ground myself and all this kind of stuff. And for many years, it caused far more issues that didn't feel good for my mind and my body than when I finally moved through that experience and that pattern. And I worked through my fears and protective projections, and I chose openness. And my openness created genuine expansion, ease, and safety. It was beautiful. I wasn't having the problems that I was having before. But here's the catch about openness. Openness without boundaries, particularly around our own agency, is self-destruction. And that, my friends, I learned that one the hard way. You, in your own time and space and ways, will come to the realization that your energy, your heart, your mind, your spirit, your actions, your hopes, they're entirely yours. They belong to you and you alone. You get to choose who you share them with, and you get to choose what you are willing to receive, what you are not willing to receive, what you are willing to let in, and what you are not willing to let in. This is the general understanding of boundaries. But more deeply, it's the mechanism that is in place if you are to sustain your infinite self more and more. This journey of what people call sovereignty or agency, it's not protecting necessarily your heart and your mind and your body. It's simply about creating governing rules so that your heart and mind and body can come and go as they please and cross this bridge between your human and your infinite self with deepening levels of trust and safety. And this is something that happens organically. It's like over time, our infinite self auto-corrects our human fears. It's like we first have to choose to kind of trust our intuition. And then we move a little bit more, and then we choose to start valuing our intuition. And then we choose it more and more, and then we listen to it more and follow it more with greater sincerity and greater conviction and greater trust. And then we get to a point where it's like we realize we can't continue to follow it and honor it by allowing people, places, and resisting thoughts or feelings to interfere with it. This is where we then choose these greater levels of boundaries in our life, which essentially is raising the bar or raising the threshold for what we will or will not tolerate for our lives, for our relationships, for our interactions, for our time, for our energy, and for our consciousness. And this is very different than fearful protectionism. When you feel safe to be open, that is freedom. And that is something through self-governing that we can genuinely give ourselves. When we feel safe to be open, is that not a tremendous aspect of the force of love? A tremendous gift of love? This is why it is deeply loving to hold space for someone. Feeling safe to express, to be as you are, allow ease to be present, allow trust to be present. This is the food of love and developing sovereignty or agency.
Here's a very blunt quote that I think really sums up the need for our own boundary creating, the importance of it, and how that really sets the stage for our own sovereignty, and how that really is essential to our freedom. And when we're in that space is when we can say, I can trust myself, and therefore I can open myself up to trusting my intuition even more. Here's the quote. A wise woman once packed all her stuff and said, "This fucked up shit will not be my story." And then she lived happily ever after. Oh, you guys. So I want to tell you a little bit now about my experience with intuition, and then we're going to go right into our sweet little practice today.
Intuition was something that I started investigating much more seriously about, I would say, 2 to 3 years ago. I was the education director for this wonderful little group called Sacred Awakenings. And there was an incredible teacher on there, guide, friend. Her name's Ginny. And if you watch another one of my podcasts, Spirit Actually, I interview her as one of my guests. She's a unicorn. She's amazing. I started actively taking her classes on our little network about connecting with your intuition. And what I experienced in those little classes with Ginny was actually how unbelievably close our intuition is to us and how very natural it does feel when we come into contact with it. The thing that startles us when we come into contact with it, at least in my experience, was that I was just afraid to trust it, even though it felt right, even though it felt like absolutely loving and absolutely there for my highest good. And today in this Lil Hair podcast, we're going to connect to intuition the same way that Ginny introduced me to our intuition. And right now, dear friends, I want to offer you hopefully a simple way that you can meet the bridge, that you can meet with, commune with, connect with, go deeper with, your own bridge between your human self and your infinite self. And I would like to give some credit to Muji, who's a delightful Jamaican spiritual teacher. I heard him on the Know Thyself podcast, and his talk inspired aspects of this practice I am about to share with you. So let's take a journey through our human nature into our infinite one. And then from that place is when we can call forth our connection to our intuition, our inherent intuition in the infinite. Intuition is simply the guiding force of your infinite self. And for that, I want to credit my friend, Ginny. And right now, my friends, I promise you the only thing that you need to experience your infinite nature now or at any moment in your life is simply your willingness. So if you are willing, join me in this practice. Alrighty, star stuffs. I want you to imagine yourself right now like you are a bird looking down on your human self. So bird's eye view as this bird looking down on your human self in the space that you're in right now. Take note of all the things in the space, in the body of the human that you're looking down on. Now, from this bird's eye view, I want you to look at your past, this human's past, from a bird's eye view, and just simply allow for the next minute or so. Allow anything that comes up for you, flashes, situations, images, moments from a bird's eye view of this human's past. Now come back from the past, right back to bird's eye view over this human in this now moment. Now I want you to do the same thing. I want you to, from a bird's eye view, imagine this human's future and allow for the next minute or so any feelings, images, flashes come before you from a bird's eye view. Now, let the future go and come back to the bird's eye view of this human right now, in this space. And now you can let this human that you're hovering above fly, 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 up and up and up away from this human. Up into the sky. You can't see this human. You've left that human completely behind. And now you're just this bird and you feel the sensation of going up and up and up and up into the sky. So you've completely left behind the past, the future, and the present. And now you're up in this sky. It's this vast, clear blue sky. And you see as this bird there in and of it all, a never-ending horizon in front of you. And you also notice around you there are clouds and streaks of light from the sun. These clouds and these streaks of light can be symbolized as your thoughts or your feelings that might still be lingering here in this sky, space between human and infinite. But all you have to do is simply allow the clouds to go by. I want you just to right now see a cloud go by and recognize you are the bird and that is the cloud. You can honor those clouds, and they are there, but they are not you. They're not the bird, and they're not the expansive sky. Now, when you're ready, take off and fly higher and higher and higher and higher until you are no longer in this sky. There are no clouds. There's no streaks of sun. You are going up and up and up into the atmosphere until you are in space. You see all the stars around you. Comets maybe, planets maybe, but oh my God, you're completely weightless. And you've realized you're not the bird anymore. You burned in the atmosphere like a phoenix with no pain, and you simply have no form anymore. You're just the space, with space, in space. Feel what that feels like. There is no end. There is no beginning. There is no now. There just is. There's no struggle, nothing possessing or controlling or comparing. It's not empty. It's full. It's full of the peace of space, nothingness. On your own time, in this space, you can choose to call your intuition to you, to speak to you, to welcome its presence in you and around you and through you. All you have to do is say, I welcome you, intuition. You can ask a question if you like. This is your space to do as you choose. All you have to do is listen. You can thank your intuition for coming to meet you here and welcome it to keep coming to you, to tell it you'll keep listening. Now I'm going to count back from 10. And all you have to do is just breathe. I want you to breathe in this experience, this space, into the very cells of your human body. Give a breath. Take a breath from the space, this infinite universe, as freely as a new baby gives and takes breath from the earth. Just breathe as I count back from 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. How do you feel? How does your body feel? You can hold or hug yourself, or even just touch and acknowledge your body again. You can hold your hands, your own hands. You're in this body, but the infinite is with you. And you did this. Your infinite self is always here with you, accessible to you. We'll just take a moment to thank it. Again, thank your body for breathing in and holding the space of the infinite in its cells. And thank yourself for journeying today. Thank you all so much for being here with me as we journeyed from our human self to our infinite self today. I'll see you next time on the Creator Being Podcast. So you darling human star stuffs, I want to say thank you so much for joining me here in this space. It's so incredible when we show up together. And really thank yourself for being in a place today where you opened your heart to this experience. If you liked this podcast, heck, better if you loved this podcast, go ahead and share it, spread the good. Send it to people that you think are going to like it. Like, subscribe, follow, all the things. Write the reviews. Let's spread the good. Why not? And if you want more offerings from me and practices, you can check out my website. It's ashcreatorbeing.com. And there you'll find all my juicy little portals, friends. I got writings on my Substack. I got my practice page. I teach live on this incredible platform, Vivaya Live. You can check that out as well. And you can find my other podcasts there as well. I have the Deeper Dive Creator Being podcast and Spirit Actually, which is about the undeniable truths in our life, the stories of them when we can no longer deny or dismiss that spirit is guiding us. Thank you so much for joining me here, and I will see you next time on the Creator Being Podcast with Ash Archambault. Mwah! Love you guys.